Hi, I'm with Trevor with Shadow Systems. I was really impressed with his handguns at range day, and especially the price point. It looks like he's offering a fully custom handgun at a very decent MSRP, especially if you factor in putting in night sights and just those ordinary upgrades that you would immediately go to. Hey Trevor, can you tell us how you guys got started and and a little bit more about your handguns?
Sure. So Shadow Systems has been around since late 2016. We originally were focused in the aftermarket parts space, so we were doing Glock barrels and slides and triggers and things of that nature. The goal of the company from the very beginning was to manufacture our own stuff. So we've invested a ton in our capability, whether that's machining or injection molding. We have parts that are being stamped or metal injection molded. And we really wanted to own our own supply chain and be able to bring amazing parts into the market at a really, really competitive price because we were making it ourselves, right? So that was how the company started. In 2017, we were doing full custom pistols built on, factory frames, and we saw, there's such an opportunity to design our own frame from the ground up that is just so much better than anything else that's out there. And I should say that all of us are shooters first. There's a lot of former military and law enforcement and competitive shooting in our backgrounds, and so that informs a lot of the decisions that we make and the design choices we make. So the first gun that we brought to market that was a true Shadow Systems design from the ground up was the MR920 pistol. That was released a year ago. It's been really successful. It's made its way into law enforcement holsters. It's made its way into all kinds of cool places, and it's a really respected, reliable, awesome gun. But we saw opportunities to tweak a little bit, and so what we're showing a shot this year is the MR920 pistol. Okay, so it's very similar to the MR918. It's still a compact size handgun, but we've just made some tweaks to the gun that make it even more shootable. And the thing about Shadow Systems guns is they are the flattest shooting production pistols out there. We have engineered these frames and these components to run like nothing else and to shoot like nothing else. So here we have the 920 Elite, and I'm just going to show you a few features on the frame. So we've added a great big recoil control ledge, a kind of a shelf for your thumb. So if you shoot thumbs forward, you now have the strongest finger on your hand engaging with the frame to help control recoil. We've changed the magazine button to add a little more traction to it. We designed the guns from the very beginning to fit G19 holsters. We always thought that was a real value add if you could use equipment that you already have and of course have a lot of options with the G19 holster. So the MR918 accomplished that, but there were a few holsters that were just a little bit tight in the trigger guard area, so we shrank up the trigger guard to help the gun fit more holsters. The frame still incorporates some of the key features of the original MR918. We've got an interchangeable backstrap system that actually changes the angle of the gun. So if you're like a 1911 guy and you always hated the way a Glock handgun points, you can adjust the angle of our grip to fit what you want. So that's a key attribute of the frame. It comes with a magazine well as well if you want to add that on. And then we changed the slide a little bit in the MR920. Probably the coolest change there is related to the optic cut. So we submitted the patent application about 2 weeks ago for a new system, and what Shadow did was we relocated the extractor to pressure plunger assembly inside the slide. We basically designed a new system that still gives the same reliable operation of the extractor, but is now much shorter. And so what that does is it allows us to run our screws all the way to the bottom of the slide. And that also means that we can have holes for multiple screws or multiple optics without concern that we're going to hit the internal components of the slide. That's a huge deal. So that's going to make this the strongest optic mounting system out there that we're aware of, and certainly the longest screws. I mean, they are almost an inch long in some cases. So we now mount the Vortex Viper, the Delta Point Pro. We still mount the RMR, the Hollow Sun, Shield RMS. There's others that we're still testing, but the bottom line is you now have a lot more options, and frankly, it's stronger, even though it's multi-footprint, it's stronger to even mount an RMR than our older design. So excellent system. The guns are getting a lot of traction, as you'd expect. They're appearing in retailers around the country. They're appearing in law enforcement holsters. They're being evaluated by military units. It's a really exciting time for Shadow and for this gun. But like you mentioned, one of the more exciting things is also the pricing. So fully manufactured U.S. gun, they start around $799, and the most expensive ones like this, they come in still below $1,000. So it's a pretty powerful offering. and I think the brand is going to continue to grow in the coming years.
So you mentioned interchangeable backstraps.
Yeah.
Let's say you're a Glock guy and you want to stick with that Glock bump.
Absolutely.
Does that come with your handguns also?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me describe the backstrap system. One of the things, by the way, that I'm most proud of is how tightly all of our components in our frame fit. You'll notice, the texture on the backstrap. It's a very seamless fit. So we really try to have that quality in our frame, and our frame, if you compare to some of the other ones on the market, I mean, it's a different animal. So anyway, to answer your question though, it comes with 3 backstraps. We don't call them small, medium, or large. We don't really think that's even the right conversation to have. I don't care how big your hands are. I want to make sure that the gun points for you naturally when you're under stress or you're scared or it's dark or whatever, right? Those kinds of applications. So the backstrap system has basically three options. We call them high, neutral, and low. And there's an H, an N, or an L on the back of the backstrap. High actually indicates where the muzzle is going to point. So in our manual, we describe a process where you close your eyes, you pick something across the room, and you press the gun out and see where it's pointed. And if it's a little bit high, then you're going to want a neutral or a low backstrap. If it's pointing down, then you're going to want maybe a high backstrap. And those backstraps will alter the angle of where the muzzle points in your hand, so you get to tune it in to have a really intuitive point. So for most guys, if you're like a Glock shooter, you're going to want the high one. Glocks we tend to point higher for most people. If you're, let's say you have like custom Glocks that have flat backstraps, or you like M&Ps or maybe CZP-10s, you're going to want a neutral backstrap. And if you are, a 1911 shooter, then you're going to want a low backstrap. And that's how you tune the gun into point for you.
So all your handguns right now, they're built off the Glock 19 platform, is that correct?
Well, so it's a Generation 4 operating system. It's an outstanding operating system, and they definitely got that right. I don't think anybody can argue with that. That also means for a lot of the internal components, there's parts compatibility if you need to use Glock parts. So we machine our internals out of solid stainless steel. The firing pin, the depressor plunger, and the triggers, firing pin safety rather, are all machined out of billet stainless and heat treated. So our parts are better, and I recommend using our parts if you need replacement parts. But in general, if you need to use Glock parts for replacement components, you can do that. There are other things, of course, that are different and don't fit. So as an example, I mean, our backstraps are proprietary to our frame, so you wouldn't be able to use like a Generation 4 backstrap or something. But
so there's a lot of manufacturers out there right now building aftermarket, let's say, carbine conversions for Glocks, MCK, Micro Ronis, the new Flux braces. Will these handguns work with those systems?
So we haven't tested the gun with every one of those. I can tell you that most of the aftermarket support for Glock systems will fit with Shadow systems as well. You may occasionally find issues where, for example, let's say our beaver tail would hang up in one of those carbine units, perhaps. I can't say that that's true, but it's a possibility. For us, the most important thing was magazine compatibility and holster compatibility. So, and lights, of course, too. So having a rail that fits the lights, having overall geometry that fits the holsters, and then, of course, magazine compatibility. To us, that's the real value proposition in terms of compatibility, and so we achieve that.
So the holsters, did you base it off of the Safariland holsters or some other manufacturer?
Well, we've tried to make sure it fits kind of everything, even tight leather holsters. Most of the holsters that we were experimenting with during our original testing were Blatex and G-Codes and KT Mechs and Safarilands, and I mean we've stuck this thing in a lot of different holsters. There are still, I'm sure, some that are a little too snug in some areas. It's kind of impossible to fit everything, but I do know for a fact that the new 920 is going to have a little broader compatibility than the 918.
And are these magazine releases, are they interchangeable like the Gen 4 Glocks?
Yeah, so our magazine release, it's our design, so we do a little bit more traction on the surface of it, but we don't extend it away from the frame any further. I think that's a really important thing to think about. Sometimes with extended magazines, somebody can set a gun flat on a table, and if you go to grab the gun in a rush, you can inadvertently depress the magazine button and drop the magazine, and now you've got a single shot, right, for your fight. So we don't extend it at all, but we did increase the traction a little bit. So you might get a little better bite, and you may not feel the need, if you have smaller hands, you may not feel the need to turn the gun in your hand as much. Now it is reversible. So again, it's the Generation 4 system. That's when it was first debuted. And the magazine button can be reversed to the other side of the frame. We send them or ship them installed for right-handed shooters, but you can very easily switch it to the other side.
Thanks so much, Trevor.
My pleasure.